I am Parker, and I use they, them pronouns.
And I'm Mike, and I am he, him, and whatever else fits. And this is the Graphic Novel Podcast. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, this is a show where we read graphic novels or sometimes some short comics, zines, things like that. And then we do a review, discussion, and we can talk about a lot of different things on this show.
Sometimes we talk about divorce. Sometimes we talk about abortion. A lot of times we talk about queer issues.
We have kids and relationships, all different kinds of stuff. So, yeah. So it's a cool show, and we're glad you're listening. And if you like our show, we'd appreciate if you go to
Twitter, go to Apple Podcasts, and give us a great rating. And if you leave a review, we may read it on the air.
And if you visit us at anchor.fm, Graphic Novel Podcast, you can actually leave a voice message that we can play on the air.
That's exciting. Do you remember growing up and hearing your voice, thinking how cool it would be to hear your voice on the radio? Yeah.
All right. Well, and on to today's show. Recording.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Parker, how's it going?
It's going. I like that you just cut off this casual conversation. And you're like, I don't want to hear anymore. I'm just going to cut it off. But, you know, I can continue it on the podcast.
You can. We can get into it later. We'll be talking about Teen Vogue, so we can always get back into it. But welcome to another week and our continuing Black History Month, which I think is doing wonderfully.
Yeah.
We've had some fantastic books that we've read and discussed. We've had nice comments from some of the creators. So it's been very cool.
I want to celebrate Black creators all the time because it's so easy. It's so easy to overlook them. You know, it's like there's so much content out there, and I think that it's really important that we give time specifically. And we talked about this from the beginning when we started this podcast, that we were going to intentionally seek out queer artists and people of color and make sure that we were reading the voices that are most often silenced. And I think I think I'm really glad that not that I'm patting myself on the back because it's like the baseline minimum that you could possibly do, but I'm glad we're doing it.
The only difference today is we're reading this. We read the story of a Black creator or a Black person, but it's not done by Black creators.
That's true.
That is the difference.
That's true. It is a really important history. And I hate to say it. I love, at least I don't know Andrew Aydin. I don't know his work. But I've seen Nate Powell's work, and he does really important work. So I'm glad to see him on here. We're reading March. We only read the first book. It's 120 some pages. So I think that, you know,
the whole thing
only doing one
is 500 pages.
Yes.
It's a big volume.
Only doing one this week, I think, was just putting it, you know, easily, but it's like just a tiny chunk, you know?
Right.
But, John Lewis's story is so important.
Exactly.
To this country's history.
Yeah.
And, so I think it was really important to include it, even though the creators weren't Black people. It's still important, I think, of a story to tell and to talk about.
Right. I agree 100%. Let's see. I'm going to look up Andrew Aydin real quick to make sure. Maybe he is a Black person. I don't know.
Well, that would make me feel like shit. I thought you said that.
No, he's not.
Okay.
He's not.
Okay.
He may be Asian. I can't see from the picture. But anyhow.
Well, you can't really tell by a picture anyway, can you?
No.
Not always.
Not a white. I can't tell if he's a white person.
Okay.
Okay, so that's that. But we'll be getting back to that in just a couple minutes. Did you have anything else?
I was just going.
You were just going?
My mouth is just moving.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we've got, I'm going to preview. It's from Titan Comics. And it is the Michael Moorcock Library Hawkmoon, The History of the Runestaff, Volume 2. Came out already, February 4th. I keep forgetting we're in February already.
I know, but it's Black History Month, so I don't forget. But it is, this year has already
yeah, we're just about halfway through the month already.
I remember our oldest today. Our oldest today was like, the month's almost. We say, okay, one day a month you can do the school lunch thing, okay, and so they're like, I haven't done it yet this month, and we're like, well, there's still half a month.
Yeah, hot lunch. Yeah. I know, they're like, oh, okay.
Oh, okay. I have a little bit of time left.
Right. So Hawk Moon. This is. Let's see. This is the concluding part of the legendary Hawk Moon Chronicles, published for the first time, written by Michael Moorcock, and adapted and drawn by the critically acclaimed artist and writer James Cawthorne. Readers can finally see the culmination of Cawthorne and Moorcock's grand vision and mark the conclusion of a saga 40 years in the telling. The art. Take a look at this type of artwork. It is quite amazing.
So much detail. Oh my
fantasy
God. Oh my
artwork.
God, yes.
It is, yes, very detailed, and it's amazing artwork.
Wow.
Yeah. And the reason I chose this, I mean, the artwork is very cool, and I'm not super into the fantasy and stuff, but when I was younger, I was more into that. When I was young teenager, I read one of Michael Moorcock's books.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was The Time of the Hawk Lords. And I remembered the book over and over.
You remembered it over and over?
Over and over. It's something that I never forgot. It was weird.
Yeah.
I bought this pocketbook because I didn't buy a lot of pocketbooks. I was more into buying
music,
metal magazines and hard rock magazines and stuff. Cream magazine and whatever.
Yeah.
Hit Parader.
That means nothing to me.
Yes, they're all gone. But well, you when you were younger, they used to have the teen magazines with all the entertainers in there.
We didn't get really magazines when I was from where I was. We didn't order magazines, and
I used to go to the store and buy them.
I guess there were magazines in the store, but we never bought them.
Right, I did. I like to read
because you like the music magazines and stuff. I was never into magazines.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
Why are we talking about that?
I don't know. Because you used to buy.
Well, and that was like one of the only pocketbooks I ever bought when I was young.
Yeah, see, that means nothing to me. What's a pocketbook? To me, a pocketbook is like a wallet. You know, when you say pocketbook, that's what I think of.
You know what pocketbooks are?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
They're
know
small.
now.
Oh.
I know now. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, in previous times, like I wouldn't say, I got this pocket. Like if somebody said to me, I bought this really cool pocketbook, I would be like, oh, that's really cool. Can I see? Like, does it fit all your cards? I don't.
Okay, it was a paperback. It was a paperback book.
I understand now. I'm not saying I don't get it now. I'm saying
just in case there are people that don't know, some millennials here who might not know what a pocketbook
don't even shit on millennials. Don't even do it.
So this book, The Time of the Hawk Lords. It was this book. It was about a rock band, like the last concert in the world and stuff. It was a weird fantasy book, and so I.
So it kind of had that musical.
Oh, definitely. That's why I bought it. Okay. It was probably the cover because it had like a picture of.
There you go. That cover means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we way off topic here?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. But So I had read that, and that's when I saw that Titan had this Hawk Moon book. I'm like, oh, that sounds familiar. Hawkwind was a band. Hawkwind. They had
Moon.
Yeah, so they had this whole thing. Lemmy from Motorhead was in Hawkwind.
Oh, okay.
He'd been in Hawkwind. I think he got kicked out.
Didn't we see them at the Erie County Fair or something?
No, that was Ace Frehley from Kiss.
Oh. No, Ace Frehley's not from Kiss. We did not.
Yes, Ace.
We saw Ace Frehley from Kiss.
First concert.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yep, it was Ace Frehley.
But he was like, he didn't have makeup on or anything.
No, but I've seen Motorhead 3 or 4 times.
Was Ace Frehley kicked out of the band?
I think so. Yeah.
So that's why he did it, or he like chose to. Okay.
He had.
Oh, that's right. Gene Simmons is like a straight edge.
And so is Paul Stanley. Both of them.
Misogynist.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Paul Stanley is a misogynist. I read his book. It was pretty good.
Paul Stanley's.
He grew up without one ear. He had an ear grafted on.
Really?
Later on. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Anyhow, so he had problem. I don't think he could hear out the one side.
Right, which is why, being a superstar is that much more fascinating.
Yeah. But anyhow, so Motorhead, Lemmy, anyhow, that's all that. And so that's why I was interested. I was interested in that book, Hawk Moon, because
the Hawk Moon and the Hawk Wind
kind of tied all together. I don't know if I could read it. I think it might be too much fantasy for me.
You
much.
think?
The art is amazing.
Yeah, the art was.
Yeah, sometimes I can't get into those stories that much.
Because of what the story is, or because the artist draws you in so much more, or
like we've not watched Lord of the Rings or what was it?
That's my own lack of interest. It's just a lack of interest in fantasy stuff, right?
Yeah, the other one too.
But sometimes
Game of Thrones, none of those. They don't really.
Well, there's a lot of violence in those movies too, isn't there? Yeah. See, the violence bothers me a lot.
I know you're scared of it.
I'm not. I just don't think. I don't get it. I don't get the need for it. I'm a pacifist.
Okay.
Speaking of pacifism,
why don't we get on to this week's story?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So we already mentioned at the beginning of the show that we're doing March by John Lewis. John Lewis was he currently is an American politician, civil rights leader.
God.
Civil rights leader. He's the U.S. representative for Georgia's 5th Congressional District, serving in his 17th term in the House, having served since 1987.
See, now that's the kind of person where I'm like, he's the kind of guy that I'm like, well, I don't want term limits because I want him there.
I know.
It's hard.
I know, because I think there should be term limits for everything.
Except John Lewis, like make him the. I know, but I can't. I can't even think of. I can't think of anybody on the other side that I would say no. Like that doesn't have to apply to you, but I can think of several on my side. So I think I'm just biased.
But see, the thing is,
like Bernie Sanders, like I wouldn't want to term limit him.
The thing is, people like John Lewis, yes, he's fighting. He was fighting then, and probably still is, for black rights, but they're for human rights.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's fighting for everybody. He's not saying, well, if you're a Republican, I'm not going to give you the same rights.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Unlike the Republicans that would have not given him the same rights.
Absolutely.
And that's
still today.
And that's the
thing.
Still
today are fighting to get rights taken away from people.
That's the thing they don't understand.
They don't want fucking bakers to bake cakes for gay people. It's oh God, it's so infuriating.
And that's the thing. They don't understand that these rights are for everybody.
Yeah.
It's not like somebody like John Lewis is just fighting for a black person.
Yeah. No. Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think the general uninformed public quite grasps how that works.
Well, I think that a lot of it comes from like you do it for you. You want to get further in the world, so you're going to fight for your own interests and your own.
That's the capitalist thinking.
Capitalism, indeed, absolutely. Like you get yours, and then everybody else has to fend for themselves. Whereas people like John Lewis are like, no, we have to work together because we all deserve the basic human rights.
Right, which is going to the Democratic primary. Andrew Aydin, who dropped out, was talking about
dropped out this week.
Was talking about $1,000 minimum that everybody would have as a basic minimum income.
Basic income. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then also Amy Klobuchar interestingly said that she doesn't want a socialist president because she wants to create more entrepreneurs. But
because that doesn't happen under socialism.
And one person on Twitter said, "Look, I've hired a couple people that can't work for me full time because they have to stay with their full-time job so they can keep their benefits."
Yeah.
So I mean, if they had basic healthcare or basic income,
yes, people would be able to do what they love, which includes being an entrepreneur. Like, people don't make their own businesses because they just want to and then they can just throw it away. Like, that's not something that's going to happen. With a basic income, that would give people the freedom to be able to do what they want to do what their passion is, which I think would create a better community. Mm-hmm. How can it not?
Yeah. Exactly.
People being happy and doing what they love. Like, there's plenty of people who aren't going to be entrepreneurs. Like I can think of so many things I would love to do. I can think of so many businesses that I would love to run. And then we talked before about, opening up a coffee shop / library and how cool that would be. But it would never be feasible because we couldn't do that without having a support system for our family.
Exactly.
Like,
yes, because we'd have to have an income.
And I mean, you've started jobs before, or started companies before, and you have to have a full-time job in order to do it. Like when you started your first company, your wife was the one who was doing the work for quite a while because you had a full-time job that you had to keep in order to support that business to get it going.
Right.
And so you couldn't even be the one who was doing the heavy duty,
we had a mortgage and bills to pay and kids.
Absolutely. And so, without that support, it could have never happened, and it became your full-time job and, supported you. But only after, right? She then started working full-time.
Right.
And so she had the insurance, health insurance, because that's not some basic right that we
Yes, and we basically
have.
swapped income so that way her income was enough to cover what we were doing. So
exactly. And can you imagine doing that job and having that income? Like that income would never help you. You would never be able to survive in the Pacific Northwest on that income. Ever.
No, the people that were working for me couldn't survive. They had to have other jobs.
No, absolutely. But you couldn't. You didn't. I mean, whatever.
I know.
I'm sorry. I got to get off my soapbox.
No, we're good. I'm good. So John Lewis's district includes the northern 3/4 of Atlanta. He's a member of the Democratic Party, and he was chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was one of the big six leaders of groups who organized the 1963 March on Washington, played many key roles in the civil rights movement and its actions to end legalized racial segregation in the United States.
Yeah.
So he is an amazing person. And unfortunately, on December 29th, he announced that he was receiving treatment for stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, that's not good.
But we can, hope that goes well for him, and he continues on because he's done a lot of important work.
Absolutely. I mean, I think his time to rest at least is now. You know what I mean? It's like you've worked so hard your whole life, and now you just have another thing on your plate. And I hope that he gets some time with his family and stuff now. And
all right, why don't you do an overview?
All right, we'll do and a lot of it might be kind of a mimicking your.
Oh, was it?
Because
about the,
I caught a couple things, but life, I'll give this synopsis. Congressman John Lewis, Georgia 5, is an American icon, one of the key figures of the civil rights movement. His commitment to justice and nonviolence has taken him from an Alabama sharecropper's farm to the halls of Congress, from a segregated schoolroom of the 1963 March on Washington, and from receiving beatings from state troopers to receiving the Medal of Freedom from the first African-American president.
Yep.
Now, to share his remarkable story with new generations, Lewis presents March, a graphic novel trilogy, although we're only talking today about the first book, in collaboration with co-writer Andrew Aydin and New York Times bestselling artist Nate Powell, winner of the Eisner Award and the LA Times Book Prize finalist for Swallow Me Whole. March is a vivid first-hand account of John Lewis's lifelong struggle for civil and human rights, meditating in the modern age of the distance traveled since the days of Jim Crow and segregation. Rooted in Lewis's personal story, it also reflects on the highs and lows of the broader civil rights movement. Book 1, which is what we read again, spans John Lewis's youth in rural Alabama, his life-changing meeting with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the birth of the Nashville student movement, and their battle to tear down segregation through nonviolent lunch counter sit-ins, building to a stunning climax on the steps of City Hall. Many years ago, John Lewis and other student activists drew inspiration from the 1958 comic book Martin Luther King and the Montgomery Story. Now, his own comics bring those days to life for a new audience, testifying to a movement whose echoes will be heard for generations.
So apparently what happened was in 2008, Andrew Aydin, who is the author, the writer of this book, trilogy, was working on Mr. Lewis's re-election campaign. And he said, you know what? He found out that he had read that comic and that Martin Luther King comic, and that was one of the things that helped inspire him. And he said, well, you know what? I wrote my thesis in college on that same comic. I think that you should do a graphic novel about your life because it's an important story. And John Lewis apparently was like, yeah, I'm not sure if that's what I want to do.
Right.
And they were able to convince him that the story is going to be his story. It's not going to be just somebody writing the story.
Right.
And then a couple of years later, they were able to get Nate Powell, who's an awesome artist.
Amazing
and
artist.
I don't know if we call him an activist, but he is definitely somebody who believes in all these causes too. He's not just somebody that they.
He's not just an amazing artist.
Yeah.
He's an amazing artist, and I think activist. I mean, I've read some of his other stuff too. And
you have read some things he's written.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he and he's a great artist. We have one of his books I read last year that we'll probably sometime this year we'll have to get to.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've already got like pretty much March already booked.
I know.
And plus we're going to be going to Emerald City Comic Con, so we're probably going to grab a whole bunch more stuff.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
I know it.
I'm so excited for that.
I know it's going to be cool.
Anyway, so make sure you head to your local store. I mean, this came out in 2013, so I'm not sure how available it is, but you can definitely find it online.
Yeah, we read it through Hoopla. Through the Seattle Public Library.
Yep, Seattle Public Library. Yep. Absolutely, Hoopla. Check it out. $15 list price for one book. Or I think you can buy the whole trilogy for $49.99. I think I read. Mm-hmm. So you can find it, and absolutely, completely, totally worth it. So let's go on with the show.
Well, so the book starts out with
I know I can't get to it for some reason.
It starts out basically with him getting ready to go to President Obama's inauguration, the first one in 2008.
Right.
And a person comes
Inauguration would have been 2009.
2009, yeah.
Right. Okay.
From the 2008 election. And his a young woman and her two children come in.
It doesn't start out there, though.
Doesn't it?
The march. It starts out talking about the march.
Oh.
It's not conducive to the public safety. You're ordered to disperse.
Oh, that's how it starts, right?
Yeah.
But the early part of the book then is about, and it keeps flashing back to this. Basically, he's talking to this woman and her two kids in his office before he leaves.
DC.
Yep.
And not even. Oh God, see, you're still jumping ahead, but I would probably too, because you read it a little sooner before me, and I'm just
okay. Go ahead.
It kind of starts out with this monotony of the daily stuff.
Yeah.
Like he's sleeping, and I don't know. I feel like I kind of want to go through it a little slower than we do maybe typically.
Go ahead.
You're going through the monotony. The alarm goes off, and John Lewis shows getting out of bed. The radio is almost like Groundhog's Day. The radio news reports going, and I don't think people even do that anymore. Does anybody wake up to a radio anymore?
I would. I don't.
Would you really set your? I mean, if we had a regular,
we did. We give it to,
but nobody does.
Child.
Yeah, but they don't wake up to an alarm.
No.
Anyway, so it's John Lewis is looking in the mirror, getting ready for his day. It's a big day, and the radio is talking about what a big day it is, and it shows him. Oh, he's got a missed call, and then you're in his office, and all of a sudden,
you're right. But like the epilogue before they even is the march at the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Yep,
that's where it starts.
Right,
and the police and everything.
It's just
shooting. It's just
one
beating
page.
them and everything.
Yeah, and it's just that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like a cold open on a TV show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like on The Office, they do every one of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And it is the monotony of him getting ready for work and everything.
And it's just another day. Mm-hmm. But it's not. It's not. It's the day
the first
black president
yes, is going to be inaugurated.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, him getting to work and that's all it is. It's pages of this. And you're right. It's just kind of showing it appears to be another day.
Right.
But it's not. And then he gets in the office and he's greeting all the people in the office and stuff. And the one woman's like, "Do you have a hat?" And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it, that kind of thing. And don't worry about me. I'm fine." But then this woman happens to come in, and he's like, "Sure, come in, come on, I'll show you around."
With her two little boys. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'll show you around. And then then
they realize who he is.
Then they realize it's him. It's not just some staff member. It's like,
which is what you expect probably when you go into, especially John Lewis's office,
showing that he's just
especially on that day.
Earth person. Mm-hmm. He's a real person.
There's no security stopping them from getting in. Like he is meeting with the people.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then it goes back into his life.
Well, the idea is that the idea is that he's telling this future generation how his life started. And I feel like, okay, so there's this show that our kids watch on PBS. It goes back into history and looks at historical figures, but it looks at them when they were children.
Oh yeah,
and it kind of takes them through their lives as if it happened when they were children, but like they tell the history of it,
so they can understand,
but they kind of act it out as children. See, like kids, like everybody who is famous was a kid at one time. Like kids can grow up and do anything. So I kind of like that idea that he's telling this story to these children because these children need to know. You need to know your history because not only can it tell you, show you what you can become, but it can give you that pride in who you are, Yeah,
I agree. But so I mean, it's going through that, and then he's telling his story, and you know where I'm going with this, where he finally he learns things, and he goes to church,
right.
And there's this whole thing with chickens and stuff.
Oh my gosh, was that not heartbreaking? He's raising chickens, and he's practicing. Like, we're atheists, so it doesn't touch me on that level in the same way that it probably is important to other Christians. But he's giving sermons to the chickens and practicing, and he's just a little kid, and that's that is his that's how he connects, and he connects so deeply with these chickens that he refuses to eat them when it's time to eat them, because that's why when you live on a farm, that's what you do.
That was his flock. Those were his pets and friends, and
his friends, exactly. His congregation.
Later on, even as a young person, he'll eat other chicken because they weren't his chickens.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
It wasn't that he disliked meat. It was just like, those were my chickens. I can't eat them. Even though like his father or mother would grab one and chop the head off, and that was dinner.
Yeah, no,
they couldn't eat it.
No, he wouldn't eat it. So I loved that little part of the story. I mean, but it shows how much compassion was in his heart too, even from a very young age.
Well, yeah, definitely.
And he talks about how he was different than his siblings, and like his uncle recognized it in him, which is when he took him for a road trip.
Summer of 1951.
His
first road trip north. So he's going from the south.
I'm sure it's probably not something that many children his age even got the chance to do.
Exactly.
And he got this amazing opportunity to go to Buffalo, New York, with his uncle.
Well, on the way though,
and they talk about
on
the
on the way they're stopping in cities where people were looking at him, and
and his uncle had taken the trip before and knew the places where it was relatively safe, not even completely safe, but relatively safe for them to stop and grab a bite or whatever. And when because many of the places it wasn't, they had to pack picnic baskets full of food.
Exactly. Right here it says, there would be no restaurants for us to stop at until we were well out of the South.
Yeah.
So we carried our restaurant with us right in the car.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so they would, he knew where he could go, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky. These were the states we had to be careful in as we made our way north. And
you can't even imagine, like, even today, there's places where Black people can't go and feel safe. And to me, that is horrifying. I can you imagine as a white person having a place where you didn't feel comfortable, like you weren't safe going? No, that doesn't happen to us, but it happens to Black people. The woman I follow on Facebook, Ijeoma Ulu, I'm probably butchering her name and I feel terrible about it. But she started this Twitter thing because she went into Cracker Barrel and made some. I mean, it was just like a comment about how like everybody's eyes were on her, and it was like she's just this, scared because everybody is watching. I mean, what did they think she was gonna do? She's just trying to eat a meal, and she couldn't even do that in peace at a Cracker Barrel, and it was this huge fight over a restaurant. And it's like, nobody should be fighting with her about her safety, but they called her racist because she didn't feel safe. Like you don't get to do that. you don't get to say that she's racist because she didn't feel safe. Like, no, we need to turn the table there. Look at the reason why she wouldn't feel safe, because we are a problem. We are a problem.
Yeah.
It's so terrifying.
So in the story then he
And
said,
I'm sorry,
no,
that's like maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
This is 1951. Black drivers passed going the other direction from north to south faced an added danger. Let me see. Their license plates making them visible targets. They knew they were from New York.
And driving a nice car. Yeah.
And then they'd say, hey, one of those N words doing with that nice car. Why do they have a car like that?
Oh God. Yeah.
But he says that it wasn't until he got into Ohio that his uncle finally relaxed because he could feel safer.
And when you can feel, I mean, you know what that's like when you feel the tension in the room, you feel the tension in the car, and then suddenly it kind of melts away.
So then this was the thing. I had no idea. By the time we reached Lake Erie and turned east toward Buffalo, I was about ready to burst with excitement. Now, to me, it's like they're going towards Buffalo. Who knows where they're going?
But east towards Buffalo, though, you know what road they're on. Like you're heading. You're at Lake Erie.
They're on 90 you're at Lake
Erie. We've driven that road
north/east.
Yeah.
But then the next picture is of like downtown Buffalo and AM&A's, and
I know. I was so excited when I saw that.
To me, this is like an amazing thing because I wrote a book about retailing in Buffalo, and a lot of it was all these places. And to him, it was, like he says, it was an otherworldly experience. It was so busy, almost frantic. When we reached my uncle OC's and Dink's house, I couldn't believe it. They had white people living next door to them on both sides.
Yeah.
To him, it was an amazing place. Now, I know Buffalo. I lived there most of my life.
Yeah, and the racism there is...
And Buffalo is a very racist place, but the east side of Buffalo was extremely mixed. It was white, but there was a pocket of black in one area, and eventually, as whites started moving out, blacks moved in throughout the east side of Buffalo.
Well, part of that was redlining and stuff too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But blacks and whites lived throughout that area for decades. And this is the early 50s. I mean, up until there's still some, but mostly whites are gone now. Although now they're starting to slowly move back in, right? because the area has been decimated over the years too.
Well, because of urban renewal.
Yes, whole blocks have been taken out, and
because of racism.
Yes, yes. And so whites are starting to move back in. But anyhow, they took him. He goes, my Aunt Leola and Uncle May Charles took me shopping downtown one day at a department store called Sattler's.
998.
That was probably because there was one downtown though.
Oh, okay.
I think was there one downtown? I can't even think now.
With the candy counter and everything.
Well, yeah, the big one on Broadway. I'm thinking that it could have been that. It's possible that was there one downtown? I don't know if there was.
You're the expert.
I don't have the book in front of me, so I can't think. But they opened multiple stores. But
it's been so long since you've done about it.
I don't know in 1951 if there was one downtown. But I mean, Broadway to downtown was literally 10 minutes. I mean, it was maybe 5 minutes by car, so it could have seemed like it was the same area.
Oh, absolutely, I could see that.
But the picture of downtown AM&A's, that was downtown.
Right.
So, but he says that they went to Sattler's, which was a big department store. And there, for the first time in my life, I rode an escalator.
Yeah.
I never even heard of such a thing. I found my way to the candy counter, and it was like magic. Let's see, what did he say? I tried to make that bag of Neapolitan candy last forever. I mean, it hit me so hard just because I've done so much research and did walking tours in that area.
Absolutely.
And talked about these buildings and the neighborhoods and stuff, and it's
right
to know that this was so important to him that he remembered it, 50 years later.
It makes you think about who your audience was too,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My audience was a lot of older people.
Right. No, I mean, certainly because they remember it brought back, but for what reasons? How many of your audience were people that was their first escalator ride? You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and that was that's 1951. He hasn't even begun his civil rights, movement and everything, and Martin Luther King and all that. I mean, and that to me was very powerful. To a lot of people, it probably meant nothing, but to me, it was important.
Right. Yeah.
And to him, obviously, like I said, it was really important to him.
Well, I think I'm sure it's important to a lot of Black people who you were raised in this area where you're not allowed to even, sit at a counter.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're at, now you can go up to a candy store and purchase something on your own.
Exactly.
And not be, turned away or whatever.
Exactly.
Like it would be a powerful moment. Yeah, absolutely.
So the story continues on, and eventually, Martin Luther King comes into it.
Well, wait. This is where they buy the chicken. The chicken.
That they eat?
He finally is able to eat in peace because they don't live in rural America. They don't live in the South where they raise their own food.
So they
go to the market and his aunt picks out a chicken and says, that's the one I'm taking home. And
I wasn't even bothered by the fate of these chickens. Maybe the fact that I didn't know them had something to do with it.
Maybe.
I do know I had no problem cleaning my plate that evening. So to him, it was, like we said,
it was the bond that he created with these chickens.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So it was very cool.
Yeah. But then in the end, he misses not the end of the story, but the end of the summer.
Yeah.
He misses his family and parents. And so it's time to go home, and he was ready.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then he hears a sermon on the radio from this Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And he's like, who is this person? And it resonated with him.
Yeah, to think that hearing something over the radio is that powerful.
It still is to me.
Yeah.
I mean, listening to old radio shows, it's just to think that they do these weekly. And just to think that people did these, like, just like a sitcom now, or whatever, that they do these shows. But these were like usually one takes too. When they recorded them, it was one time, straight through. They didn't cut in piece and do 30 takes. And
of course
not.
The
Office, we listened to that podcast, and sometimes they were laughing so hard they do 30 takes on one scene.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, do you want to go somewhere on this thing? They get into segregation with schools.
I think we skip past a little bit of the schooling aspect.
Yeah, you can say anything you want about that.
Well, he wanted to go to school so badly that there were days when his parents were like, no, we need you home
to farm.
We need you home to do the work.
That's right.
And he wanted to go to school so badly that he would hide.
Yeah, he'd like hide under the house.
Under the house or under the porch or something. It looks like they'd be calling, and then he would take off as soon as he heard that bus.
And he'd run and he'd jump on the bus, and he said his father never said anything. Even
he said that he better never do it again.
Okay, yes, but he never actually
beat him,
did
which
anything.
is what he was thinking was coming. He said he knew that going there, that going to school when he wasn't supposed to could lead to a lashing from his father, but it never came
because he loved school and he wanted to go to school.
And I think that his parents were obviously
they knew
that he was different and that he deserved that space.
But they couldn't say, okay, you can go to school, the rest of you have to stay home and work.
Exactly.
So,
and he still got the tongue lashing of you better not do this again kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So then he hears the sermon by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I mean, it shows I can't quite figure out, is this the siblings are all sleeping together?
I don't remember.
Okay, it shows it shows three people, and I guess it could be him and his parents, but I'm thinking it's how many siblings did he have?
I do not recall.
Social gospel. He calls it. I'm thinking that they are sleeping in bed together.
It's possible. They probably didn't have many
rooms. And he's
rooms.
just awake, thinking about what he just heard on the radio. He can't sleep. He's just thinking, and it's just. He said it felt like he was preaching directly to me. For something to hit you so hard and to feel so deep in your soul that it was meant for you,
Right.
He was clearly meant to be a special person from a very young age.
Then he talks about Emmett Till and how this incident obviously resonated with him also.
Mm-hmm.
He's down visiting relatives from Chicago when his body's pulled from the Tallahatchie River. The day before, as he left the Money Country store with some friends, Emmett said, "Bye, baby," to the white woman behind the counter. The next day, he was dead.
Bye, baby. That's all it took.
Yep.
That's what his life, why his life ended, because he said, "Bye, baby." Can you imagine for a moment 2 words coming out of your mouth and it being your death?
Yep.
Can you imagine?
Yep. A black farmer witnessed the 2 white men dragging his body from his relative's home and had the courage to testify against them in court, but the all-white jury found the 2 white defendants not guilty. A few months later, they even confessed to the murder in Look magazine.
Wow.
But there was nothing to be done. They'd already been tried. And if I remember correctly, years later, the woman said that it did not happen or something. Was that the one?
I don't know.
That she said that did not happen.
What did not happen?
The bye baby thing or something.
So she just didn't like him. That wasn't even.
I don't know if it was that one, but it was one of those horrible murders.
Mm. I mean, not that would deserve it, obviously.
But no. I'm saying no. Exactly.
It makes it that much more terrible.
Yep.
That she just didn't like that he was black and in her store.
Yep. Then December 1955, Rosa Parks refused to move to the back of the bus. All these things were starting to happen.
The things that we learned kind of a little bit about in school.
I never did. I never learned any of these things.
I think I learned very briefly about Rosa Parks.
Yeah.
Very briefly.
Yeah. So, and he started paying attention to all these incidents, the bad ones, the things like the resistance, like Rosa Parks.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, here, I followed it almost every day, either in the papers or on the radio.
Yeah, he was destined for his greatness, really. He was. He knew, and he did the work,
Yep.
that never should have been required of him. But yeah.
So, I mean, eventually he went into preaching. He thought that was going to be where he went.
Yeah.
And that was how he met Martin Luther King, wasn't it? Because of that.
5 days before his 16th birthday, he had his first sermon, his first public sermon, and so that he had his picture taken for a magazine or
something was in the newspaper,
Montgomery Advertiser, yeah. And I think it was at least in the picture here, it has a picture of underneath it says "Boy Preacher,"
right?
And that's what got Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s attention.
Right.
He wanted to meet that boy preacher.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he ended up going to a what school was this? In Nashville, called American Baptist Theological Seminary.
Well, which his mother had learned about. I feel like
no, we don't have to tell the entire book. I mean, and so he went to school there, and still was following all these things going on.
Yeah, of course.
And I think, he said he started to feel guilty for not doing more. And I think that's really what happened.
But at the time, he was going to school, getting an education, like that was an act, and I understand where he's coming from, that he felt like he wasn't involved enough, but it's like, God, you're doing the work.
Oh, we got it wrong about Martin Luther King. He applied to Troy State. Which was an all-white school with no black students.
Well, right. That's what prompted the meeting.
He never heard back from him, so he wrote to Martin Luther King and said, "Hey, can you help me?"
Yes, but that's when he said, "I want to meet the boy preacher." So,
okay. So it's kind of tied together. Yeah.
Yes. That was my
Yep. And they said, "Okay, what do you want to do? Because they're not.
We can help you, but
they're not just going to let you in. We're going to have to fight this,
and it's not going to be easy.
Yes, they're going to go after your family.
You could get hurt. Your family could get hurt." And that was the terrifying reality, because he wanted to go to school. He wanted to go to school, and the terrifying reality was your family could die for you to maybe have a possible chance of going to school, which is freaking terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when he met Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And,
the boy, I'm sorry.
Young man who wants
maybe I'm wrong.
Desegregate Troy State.
Are you the boy from Troy?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought that I thought he said something about the boy preacher, but maybe I'm confusing things.
It's all right. But
I mean, not really.
Martin Luther King and his assistants, they questioned everything about him because they knew that this was all going to come out.
He said, I wanted to meet the boy from Troy. It wasn't the boy preacher. I was confusing the two.
Right. It's okay.
It's really not. I want to make sure that I say it correctly. It's not okay.
Oh, and that's the thing. His parents, because he wasn't old enough, his parents would have had to sign onto this lawsuit.
Which was the concern, is that their house then is under.
Yes. Your friends could lose their jobs. Your family could be bombed or burned.
Yeah.
You may get hurt.
Yeah.
Or your family may get hurt.
Yeah. And so then he said, my family was supportive at first, and then the reality of what could happen really settled in.
Yeah.
And, ultimately they had to say, like, we can't do this. We can't risk everything. Yep. Yeah. It's too much, which, I mean, I can't even imagine being willing to put myself through that in order for my kid to go to a college.
Exactly. So he eventually continues his activism. Gets involved
because even that doesn't knock him down.
No. He continues. He becomes involved in these lunch counter sit-ins and becomes an active participant. Gets other students. There are all these students that all are doing this. They're all doing this, and they can arrest them. But then they can arrest them again, and they can arrest more of them. But how long are they going to continue arresting them? They were starting to disrupt businesses and courts. And
people didn't want to support the businesses anymore because it was just they were going to get there in the counter. That's what happened. They'd go and sit there, and so they'd just close the counter down. So now these people are going there, and they practice. That was amazing. I never knew that they practiced
nonviolence.
Nonviolence. They would sit, and then they would take turns. Each other would take turns saying terrible, horrible, spitting on each other, throwing drinks at each other. Like, they would sit and practice loving the person, because that's how you get through it. And sometimes you couldn't handle it, and you had to take out. You had to take a step back and say, "This isn't the place for me. I will support you in other ways, but I can't." Yeah,
that had to say, "No, I can't. I'm not going to put up with this."
I'll make signs. I will support you in that way, but I can't. I can't do this.
I can't let somebody.
And I think that that's obviously a really important. It's really important. It was really important for them. And I think even for protesters today to recognize, if you are a nonviolent protester, you have to stand that line. You can't be violent, because one person being violent takes the whole group.
It does, because you see that they have this every year here, May Day.
Yeah.
I mean, last year there was nothing. It was silent last year. The Seattle police are always prepared with everything. Last year, nothing happened, but for several years before, it just, you get one person doing something or throwing something at a cop, and then that's it. Then the cops come after them, and it doesn't matter whether you were doing it. You're part of that side.
Yeah.
And there was,
which I don't agree with, but we don't have to get into that now.
No, but that's where they did this, and they just kept doing it, and eventually businesses.
But it would kill their message, because their whole message was to spread peace and to have this nonviolent way. That they were protesting, but they were not being violent. They were coming in, they were sitting down and asking to be served, and when they weren't served, they would ask for a manager. When the manager said they wouldn't serve them, they were just going to sit there and wait to be essentially wait till the place closed down, or until they asked them to leave. And I think I can't, it's so moving to see how far people would risk their lives and risk everything because they were being, sit at a lunch counter.
But these white people, there was a lot of these young white people. It was like, you don't belong here. And then they'd start fights. This is later, even after they've been doing this.
Right.
Just start fights with them.
Yeah.
It's just horrible. They're just people. They just want to go to the store. They want to go to Woolworths and sit at the lunch
counter.
Tell
them to go back to Africa. It's like, fucking white people dragged them here. Like, you dragged Africans here. Like, you don't get to tell them to go back to someplace that they have just as much right to this country.
And the problem is there's
and
fucking
really,
idiots
you took over this country to begin with from indigenous people. So, shut your mouths.
But I didn't do it.
But see,
exactly. But the extremely painful and sad thing is that there's fucking scumbags doing that today, telling people to go back to Africa. Today.
I can't even.
It's
infuriating.
It is. It's like,
for me, who doesn't have to live that existence.
No, I know. But so this was just book one.
I can't wait to read. Do you think are we going to do the book 2 and 3? I mean, they're.
I think we'll read them. I don't know if we'll do.
Yeah,
one
that's what I was
not.
wondering if you wanted to do them. I mean, it would be.
It won't
always,
be for a while.
Yeah, because I don't know why not, but
we just don't have time.
We have so many other books in line already, but I definitely think that. We'll obviously read them. I am fascinated and touched by this history, and I honestly think that it's important for everybody to read.
Yeah.
So yes, everybody should go out today and buy it. Buy the trilogy, read them all.
Yeah.
Go to Hoopla, read it.
Oh, there was something.
This is the history that we didn't get taught in our school books, and it's. I mean, there's no reason for me to have not known John Lewis's name, but I didn't. Up until adulthood, I didn't know who he was, and that's just.
Well, I agree. So I forgot there was Teen Vogue did an interview with him.
Recently?
I think when book 3 came out, 2017. Yep, in 2017. And so there's some questions, but one of them is, how did you remain so resolute in your nonviolent advocacy? And he said, when I was growing up, my mother and father and my grandparents would tell us, don't get in trouble. That's the way it is.
Well,
but I didn't like that way, so I had to do something about it. So through the sit-ins, the freedom rides, the marches, I got arrested 40 times during the 60s and have been arrested 5 times since I've been in Congress.
Wow.
I've been beaten and left bloody and unconscious here and there, but I never had any idea of following the path of Stokely Carmichael or Malcolm. So, I mean, it was just him. I mean, he was just.
But he practiced it too. Yeah.
When someone would beat us or pour hot water, hot coffee or hot chocolate on us or spit on us, try to fumigate us in a restaurant, you just took it. I never had any idea or thought of striking back.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know if I could do that.
I couldn't.
I don't know if I could do that. I'd probably get killed, but I don't think I could just let somebody abuse.
The strength that this man has.
Not just him, all of these young people that were doing this.
All of them. Absolutely.
So what inspired you to tell the story as a graphic novel? And Andrew Aydin said, I think it was absolutely critical to add the visual element. I grew up in Atlanta in the congressman's district.
Oh, wow. Okay.
As the pastor of, let's see, the congressman is saying you can't sweep anything under the rug. You got to tell the whole truth, the whole story.
Yeah.
And what sort of emotional toll did it take not only know and hear about what actually happened to Congressman Lewis, but to actually have to physically draw the images?
Yeah.
And Nate Powell says it was a multi-tiered experience in that way. I'm from the American South, and so is every generation in my family, going back hundreds of years.
Oh, wow.
I was born in the 70s, and my parents were baby boomers. So my work on March was, in a lot of ways, a reckoning with my own experience as a kid, learning about the civil rights movement in the very towns where I lived from my parents, from history, and from my personal. And
that's interesting, too, that he learned about it, because I feel like a lot of people in the South don't get. I mean, we barely get that education, and you hear about. I mean, even the friggin' Civil War, they get a completely different history of it than we do.
Yep, I agree. So Nate continues. He said, one of my priorities as a cartoonist was to destroy that level of abstraction, and the most important thing was to make people deal with the fact that this was something happening down the street or in a neighboring state, and that it was something that was happening in their lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and they did win a National Book Award and the Coretta Scott King Book Award.
Oh, wow.
That's great. So great. So that was really good. And this was 2017. This was when Trump was just in office too. 1789. Yeah, it was when he had just gotten to office.
I don't even want to.
And the question is, with our political activism in such a galvanizing moment, what words would you like to leave with young authors who are thinking about undertaking important projects of their own? And Andrew Aydin says, I think you have to do it. You have such a moral obligation to contribute. If you've been blessed enough to have an education that allows you to create, that gives you the opportunity to create art, to create literature, you have to use it for good.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, just, just unfortunately, it's just like the other major one that we picked, George Takei's book. Another piece of history that we shouldn't have to talk about. We would wish that it wasn't something we had to discuss.
Well, no, I
mean because I wish it never happened.
Definitely.
But I think
I
that
see.
it needs to be discussed. It needs to be talked about.
It needs to be talked about in every classroom in this country.
Yep.
Every classroom in this country should be talking about this.
Yep.
John Lewis's name should be spoken by every teacher across the country. Why is he not?
I don't know. And I saw something.
You shouldn't have to have a day of the year to be talked about.
No, exactly.
This is a huge chunk of our history, and he has the pictures too of when they're asking for when they were arrested and asking for bail, and the judge turns his back as the lawyer is speaking, and I'm going, oh my God, he did not just do that.
Yeah.
But of course he did, because he didn't care. He knew what he was doing. They were found guilty. He didn't listen to any little bit of evidence. He didn't care. He was finding them guilty, and that's all he cared about. He just had to get through it. Just pretend to listen, but not even he didn't even baseline pretend. He turned his back on them.
Yeah.
That is not what judges in this country should be doing.
Yeah. Well,
should have been doing and are still doing.
In the South, where there's a lot of them, and unfortunately the hundreds that douchebag has put in federal courts,
terrifying.
Which they said is going to go
forever,
reflect for decades.
Long time. Yes.
They said it's going to reflect for decades.
Absolutely,
it's going to change the course of a lot of laws over the years.
And you don't think about. I mean, the
Republicans have just been shoving those through because that's
what they want, though. That's what they want, because those have the impact. Those have the impact in the small areas that I mean, talk about trickle down economics. That's what they think. That's how they recognize it. It's the trickling of the people. You take out the voting rights,
Yep.
The more black people you have in jail, the less black people you have that can vote. It just oh man.
I know. I agree. It's so infuriating.
Beyond
so
infuriating.
I know we've talked about it before, but anyhow,
they as stupid as I feel like Republicans are in general,
they've known what they're doing for the past 30 years. This has all been planned, and hopefully they can flip that Senate, at least make it 50-50 to make it impossible for them to do anything on their own, because that's why all these judges have gotten through.
So get out and vote. That's what we're talking about, people here.
Had a majority, and they're able to just push these judges through without any Democrats' assistance.
Yeah.
They can just push them through. So
go read this book.
Go read March.
It's amazing.
Great story.
I don't know if we even talked about it's black and white. Did we talk about the art at all?
Yes,
black
we said that Nate Powell's art is great.
He is a fantastic artist. And John Lewis's story is just so worth being told. I mean, I wish they need classes. They need classes to be talking about this.
That's what I was going to say. I saw somebody that said that they're using that as a high school history class.
Fabulous. That's good to
in their class, and they said that they're getting great response from it.
I bet because number one, kids younger. I mean, look at us. We're full-grown adults sometimes.
Yep.
and comic books or graphic novels have drawn us in. Getting teenagers to read is probably in general not the easiest thing to do.
But this is history, not
but graphic novels
to read history like that.
I hated history class. I hated it because it none of it. It was just a bunch of dates that were just thrown at me. None of it seemed. I remember learning about Native Americans. The few paragraphs that we got every once in a while. That wasn't even the true history. But most of our history was just thrown at you in these giant paragraphs, and you just had to kind of memorize. And I just don't learn that way. This is speaking to me on such a huge level, and I think that students across the country would just gain so much from learning from this. So that's really exciting to me to see that teachers are using this as an opportunity.
I have to teach. I think I still have it. I had a 2-volume set of I believe I met the artist when we were doing Comics TV. He was a comic book artist, and he was a World War II veteran, and he did his story in 2 volumes, his story from World War II. As
a comic book, though.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a graphic novel, 2 hardback books.
Huh.
And my uncle was a World War II veteran, and I gave it to him to read, and I don't know if he ever read it. He probably didn't. But I was really into. He would talk to me. I don't know if he talked to anybody else. He would talk to me about. I think he somehow, this was before I was even doing into history, but he knew that I connected with that.
Interesting.
And I tried to get him to tell his story, and he's like, no, he didn't like to talk about it. He just said he never saw combat. He worked on a ship. That was like a supply ship or something. So they didn't see combat themselves, but he was in World War II. I mean, he was there while it was going on. And he just said that it was what I had to do. It was what I did. I wasn't a hero, nothing important.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
I mean, my grandfather was at Pearl Harbor. Yeah. So, I definitely, and wrote a book about it that I've read, but it's, and I would imagine we could probably make a graphic novel out of it.
I don't want to. I don't want to give him any credit.
Yeah, that makes it kind of tough, doesn't it? Yeah.
All right, but next week we're going to be reading Black Sheep. We got three volumes. Oops. They're like little zines, but there's 3 volumes. We're going to read those.
Yeah, I'm excited. They've been kind of moving around the house a little bit, and I'm like, oh, I want to pick this up. And then I have a really hard time, and I think this is why I kind of wait until the last minute every week to read my book. I just have a hard time to. I start to combine the stories in my head for some reason. I know. It's really hard for me to read multiple stories at a time. So I'm like, okay, I have to wait. I have to wait to pick it up until it's time for me to,
so you can put,
this one has gone through my brain, and it's sitting and it's absorbing and, doing all the fun stuff that your brain does with stories. And then I can move on to the next one.
I get it, because I'm usually reading 2 or 3 books at a time.
I don't know how you do it. I don't know.
I've already read, I think, 2 or 3 for next month, which I'll have to skim over again. But,
right. You have to skim them over again.
But I've read it, so I know that they're good, so we can use them.
Right.
But yeah, so next week, going to be another good one. And we got, I think, just one more week after that for Black History Month. And until next week, my name is Mike.
And I'm Parker.
And this is
the Graphic Novel Podcast. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy listening to our podcast, make sure that you like, share, give us a great rating. We'd love to hear back. You can find us on Twitter at Graphic Novel Pod, or you can check out our Instagram at Graphic Novel Podcast.
Or you can visit our website. We got a brand new website. It is graphicnovelpodcast.com. Or you can send us a comment or question or any kind of thing like that.
Yeah, we love hearing from our listeners.
Yeah, request for a book to be reviewed or anything like that to graphicnovelpodcast@gmail.com. And biggest thing, if you're listening to the podcast and you like it, visit your favorite podcast distribution host like iTunes or whatever, and give us a review. Give us Stitcher, Breaker, all them, and give us a review and stars, because that's.
Hey, if you give us 5 stars in a review, we may read it on there.
Yes, we will definitely, and that will help us expand the number of people listening to our show.
That's the best way that we can share our show is by our listeners.
That's right. So thanks for listening again this week.